You know, sometimes you see a headline like the one about Pakistan's government putting a big canals project on hold in Sindh after
Yeah,
protests.
exactly.
And it feels local, but then you dig deeper and it just opens up this whole complex picture.
It really does. And that's what we're going to do today. We're taking a deep dive into Pakistan's Green Initiative, the GPI, and specifically the controversy around these six strategic canals,
Right.
especially the Kholistan Canal.
Right. And we're drawing on reporting from the Indian Express to help us unpack this. Now, for you listening, particularly if you're preparing for the UPSC exams, think of this as our mission today.
Mm.
We want to show you how things like agricultural policy, those, well, sensitive interprovincial relationships, economic pressures, and even old historical issues, they all weave together here.
It's a perfect case study, really. It shows the real-world tangle of governance, resource fights, regional politics.
Exactly. So let's set the stage. The Green Pakistan Initiative, GPI, launched back in 2023 by PM Sharif and the Army Chief General Munir. It's a big one, right? About $3.3 billion.
That's the figure. And the goals are ambitious. Modernize farming, boost yields, and crucially, bring currently unusable land into cultivation.
And it's managed by an Army-owned private company, which is interesting in itself.
It adds another layer, definitely.
Yeah.
And you have to see this against the backdrop of Pakistan's recent struggles. Food shortages, massive import bills.
Yeah, I saw those numbers. The Pakistan Bureau of Statistics is projecting over $9 billion in food imports for this fiscal year, FY 2025.
And they've already hit over $6 billion just between July and March of 24-25. So the pressure to, grow more domestically is immense.
It really puts the GPI and these canals into perspective. It's not just about development. It's seen as vital for basic needs and, well, economic stability.
Precisely. Which brings us to the canals themselves. President Zardari gave the green light back in July 2024. They were framed as essential for agriculture and food security.
6 strategic canals in total under the GPI. But the one that's really caused a stir is the Kholistan Canal.
That's the one. It's the biggest, the most expensive, and definitely the most criticized.
It's planned to be 176 kilometers long, aiming to irrigate arid land in southern Punjab, right near the Indian border in Rajasthan.
But here's the rub. Getting enough water to Kholistan, it's a huge challenge. There was even a paper in 2023 from the Pakistan Council of Research and Water Resources highlighting just how difficult that would be.
Yet the federal ministry, according to Al Jazeera, called the canal a critical intervention. They see it as the way to get reliable water to this, well, currently uncultivable land.
And the scale is significant. We're talking almost $800 million for the cost, aiming to irrigate nearly 5,000 square kilometers. That's what, about 1.2 million acres? Dawn reported that figure.
1.2 million acres. That's a lot of land. And they actually started building it, didn't they?
They did. But as you mentioned up front, construction's been halted.
Which brings us squarely to Sindh's reaction as the lower riparian province, meaning they're downstream.
They're naturally very sensitive to anything happening upstream that affects their water supply.
So the official plan, the justification, was that the Kholistan Canal would be fed by floodwater. Specifically, floodwater coming down the Sutlej River released by India.
Right, that's the official story. Sounds plausible on the surface, maybe.
But it doesn't quite add up, does it, if you look at the data?
Not really. Pakistan's own Ministry of Water Resources data from 2018-19 showed that only a tiny fraction, like 3.4% of their total water, actually comes from those eastern rivers controlled by India, the Sutlej, Beas, and Ravi.
So relying only on the Sutlej experts are basically saying it's virtually impossible.
Pretty much. And this taps into the much bigger, much more critical issue, Pakistan's heavy reliance on the Indus River system, which is already under enormous stress.
So the fear is these new canals, all 6 of them, will just make a bad situation worse, drain even more water.
That's the core concern, especially in Sindh. They're worried about their existing farmland. There was a piece in The Nation that put it starkly, something like,
I think I saw that quote. The federal government seeks to cultivate 1.2 million acres in Kholistan at the cost of jeopardizing 18 million acres of Sindh's land.
Exactly. That contrast, 1.2 million versus 18 million, that's what fuels the anxiety down there.
And it's not just about the amount of water, right? They have other worries too.
Oh, absolutely. They fear it will worsen water stress generally, starve the Indus Delta, which is ecologically vital, speed up seawater intrusion.
Which ruins fertile land.
Precisely. And potentially decimate fragile ecosystems. Dawn reported on these broader environmental concerns, too. It's a whole cascade of potential problems from their perspective.
So you have the water scarcity issue, the environmental worries, and then layered on top of that, old rivalries.
Yes, this whole thing has really poured fuel on the fire of historical tensions between Sindh and Punjab.
When Punjab's chief minister, Mariam Nawaz, and General Munir kicked off the canal construction back in February, that's when the protests in Sindh really erupted.
It tapped right into that feeling, which exists not just in Sindh, but other provinces too, that Pakistan is dominated by Punjab, that whole Punjabistan sentiment.
A feeling of being marginalized. And this canal project gets linked to past disputes over things like hydropower projects built upstream in Punjab.
Exactly, if it's a pattern in their view. Nasir Memon, an environmentalist, made a key point to Al Jazeera. He said Punjab already has its guaranteed water share.
Right.
So when new irrigation schemes pop up, seemingly without a clearly defined new water source, people in Sindh inevitably get angry and suspect their share is being threatened.
Which puts the Pakistan People's Party, the PPP, in a really tight spot.
Hugely difficult. They rule Sindh, but they're also part of the federal coalition government led by the PMLN. Their support is vital in Islamabad.
And initially, didn't they seem okay with the GPI? I recall President Zardari, their co-chairman, calling the canals vital.
He did, but that didn't play well back home in Sindh. The backlash was strong, apparently even within the PPP itself.
Leading to talk of a potential split with the PMLN.
There were definitely murmurs, which likely led to the pretty sharp U-turn we saw.
Right, the big announcement recently.
Yeah.
PM Shebaz and the other PPP co-chairman, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, both present, saying the project is on hold.
And Bilawal made that statement quite forceful, saying not a drop of Sindh's water would be conceded while the PPP is around, but also stressing they'd keep working with the PMLN.
Trying to walk a very fine line there.
A very fine line indeed. But even with that announcement, the suspicion in Sindh hasn't just evaporated. The strikes, the protests, they haven't been called off yet.
Even though their own chief minister from the PTP asked them to.
That's right, which tells you how deep the mistrust runs, and it leaves this big question hanging. What happens if the project comes back, maybe slightly changed? How does the PPP navigate that?
Okay, so pulling this all together, especially for you listening, what are the key takeaways? We're seeing this incredible knot of issues.
Definitely. You've got ambitious agricultural plans hitting up against these really ingrained federal versus provincial tensions.
The absolute criticality of water management, especially where it's scarce, how history casts a long shadow.
Those old grievances bubbling up again. And then just the pure political maneuvering within a coalition.
And again, for UPSC aspirants, this is just, it's textbook almost in its complexity. You see governance challenges, interstate relations, or, well, inter-provincial relations here.
Socioeconomic consequences of big development projects, sustainable resource management.
Yeah.
It touches on so many crucial themes. Understanding Pakistan's internal dynamics like this is really valuable for grasping the wider region.
So it leaves us with a pretty challenging thought, doesn't it? Pakistan clearly needs better food security. That's urgent. But Sindh's concerns about water, about their land, their environment, those are deeply felt and seem legitimate too.
Absolutely.
So the question for you to ponder is, are there any solutions out there, sustainable ones, politically feasible ones, that could actually meet both needs? Boost agriculture without deepening these regional divides and water crises?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? Finding that balance.
It really is. Something to think about. Now, if you found this deep dive helpful, especially for your UPSC prep, please do hit that like button and subscribe for more analysis.
And please use the comment section. If you have questions or your own thoughts on potential solutions, we'd love to hear them.
Your engagement really helps us focus these discussions.
Definitely.
And just to remind you, our discussion today was based on reporting and excerpts from the Indian Express.